A very warm welcome to all of you. Jai Hind and welcome to Raj Malhotra IAS and to the daily current affairs and MCQ series. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a series which we conduct on a daily basis to discuss the current affairs and the questions, some of the most probable MCQs based on that, on those news articles, right? So as to ensure that you also are revising the current affairs through MCQs on a daily sustained basis, right? And to give you an edge in the upcoming UPSC Prelims exam, right? So let's get started. The first article that we are discussing concerns the World Economic Forum and the Davos Agenda 2022 that is underway. And this time, remember, it is the virtual summit that is being conducted because you all know that the restrictions are back because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Omicron variant, right? So what becomes important from your prelims perspective is that what are the international summits which are conducted? Certainly the recent WEF Davos World Economic Forum, then the 2022 virtual edition and important facts related to it and what exactly has been the role that India has played, whatever the achievements, whatever the commitments are being made by India, right? So discussing some things regarding the 2022 edition of the World Economic Forum Summit, the Davos one, that is, it is hosting world leaders and heads of important institutions. So it is not just the commemoration, or you can say it is not just the collective effort of the heads of the governments of different states, but also of important multilateral institutions, right, which come together. This year in the 2002, the World Economic Forum is concerning, is having three main areas of concern. What are those three areas? Climate action. Certainly you also had the COP26, which was just concluded, right? So that also has to be seen here. Climate action, then pandemic recovery and economic and social resilience, because in the wake of this pandemic, the economic and the social fabric of across the world that has got disrupted, right? So that is exactly the third point which we are talking about here in the WEF Davos 2022. Then when we talk about our own country particularly, so Prime Minister, he addressed the agenda through a virtual conference only, through a virtual meeting only. And what he delivered was the state of the world special address at the World Economic Forum, right? What has been highlighted from India's side is that certainly there are the throwaway cultures and the culture of consumerism that has enhanced the challenge of climate change, which is one of the major areas, or which is one of the main areas which are, underway, which is under talks at the 2022 edition. Apart from that, he said that we are just, as a country, we are just contributing 5% of the global carbon usage. That is to say that India itself, is acting in a very responsible manner. We are not contributing much to the emissions of the GHGs also and the carbon usage as well. But still we have commitment to achieve 40% of its installed electric capacity of our electric capacity from non-fossil energy by the year 2030 at the COP21 that was declared as a part of the nationally determined contributions. So the NDCs, these are voluntary in nature. Every country, each country or every country, you can say, it declares its INDCs, that is the nationally determined contributions which they intend to achieve over a period of years, right? So that is what was reiterated by the Prime Minister regarding India. Now, apart from that, we are already leading ahead on this trend with 40% of the total installed energy capacity of 392.01 or 392 gigawatt. What is the matter here is that already India is onto a path where we have already, we are already moving ahead of our schedule of our achievement of the targets which we intend to by the year 2030. Right, so that will be कि हम 2030 आने से पहले we'll be able to achieve all these things, right? And that certainly gives a message loud and clear to the world that our commitment is not hollow. We are also there to walk the talk, right? So that is regarding this particular article. Then if we talk about some of the major concerns or major issues that are under discussion at the 2022 Davos Summit, these are the major discussions which are on the table, that is regarding net zero emissions, then economic opportunity, but also along with nature positive solutions, that is aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, right? Certainly you need to take into consideration the environmental aspect as well. Then apart from that, create cyber resilience. Why? Because the COVID-19 pandemic has forced many of the things to go in an online or virtual fashion. So that means that we need to ensure cyber resilience. We need to ensure that we are operating in an environment which is free of, or at least having minimal amount of disruptions from any kind of cyber attacks, right? So that is another thing. Then strengthen golden value chains, build economies in fragile market through humanitarian investing. Now you see, why are we talking about global value chains? Why are we talking about global value chains? We are talking about global value chains because as soon as China was hit by the pandemic, we saw that there were huge disruptions. There were huge disruptions over the global supply chains. Because why? China has come to become, or China has come to be known as the factory of the world. And that is why one country having such significant dominance, or one country having so many countries dependent on that, what does that mean? That means that if there are disruptions in that particular economy or in that particular country, that is going to lead to the disruption of the entire value chain. And not just that, be mindful of the fact that what if that the Chinese themselves, if they themselves want to disrupt that chain just for arm twisting a country or a group of countries that is displaying their economic might, not going to the usage of their military might, but because they have such kind of heft, such kind of dominance, that can also certainly lead to drastic, or that can also lead to disastrous outcomes, that can lead to a kind of catastrophe, I would say, on the economic front. Because now you have the concept of what? Economic integration all across the world. One happening in one part of the world does have repercussions on any other country in any other part of the world, right? So that is why you need to ensure that these fragile markets are not allowed to take place, are not allowed to become dominant, right? Then building or bridging the vaccine manufacturing gap. Here comes the case of one continent which comes to our mind, and that is the African continent. Certainly these people are, or they have been largely left at the mercy of the COVAX initiative. They have been left at the mercy of the rich, prosperous countries, the developed ones, particularly the North Americans and the Western European countries, right? And apart from that, you also have another thing which can be related here. Africa certainly is having now witnessing the ever growing Chinese presence there. So you again have China, right? So according to that particular angle, or from that perspective also, you need to ensure that Africa at least you help them out, not just letting them become dependent upon one country, that is China, right? I believe that you might be witnessing that this is becoming China centric, but that is what it is. China is the elephant in the room, right? Then apart from that, use data solutions to prepare for the next pandemic. Now what does that say? That says that the world leaders are contemplating that this is not going to be the end. COVID is not going to be the end. We might, whatever have been done by humanity in the past, that will have repercussions in the future, and certainly that could lead us to maybe another pandemic. So you need to be prepared for that as well. You cannot be taken, just by shock, as was the case with pandemic, as was the case with the COVID-19, that everybody, the world was taken by just a shock, right? So you have to be resilient enough, you have to be prepared enough, you have to be far-sighted, and you need to look into the future as well, right? So that is those are some of the global issues that are under discussion at Davos 2022. ठीक है? So I believe these are very crisp points. देखो, ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ prelims के लिए important नहीं है. I'm reiterating the fact here that these are very crisp points from both your prelims perspective plus also your mains perspective. And why just restrict to the mains, but also the personality test or the interview, as you call it, right? Because certainly these are issues which are hotly debated in these days by these multilateral forums, by these leaders, and certainly you need to be abreast with them, right? Great. So let's take the question now. That is, which of the following statements is or are incorrect with respect to the Davos agenda? First, the P3 approach related with pro-planet people was proposed by Norway at the 2022 edition of the Davos agenda. Second, the 2022 Davos has an interactive mode whereby the public can interact through virtual connections. And third, the World Economic Forum has its genesis rooted in what was originally called the European Management Forum. So please mark your answers quickly. I'll just take a halt here. Hanji, what do you think should be the answer here? Chaliye, great. So Rohit is saying A is the answer. Yes, the rest of you? Sakshi says B. Okay, great. So I'll start discussing the first statement. Look, first, please be sure that you are supposed to mark the incorrect statements here. And this P3 approach, that certainly is pro-planet people, but that was not Norway, but that was the Indian Prime Minister himself who had talked about this approach at the 2022 Davos agenda, right? So the first statement outrightly becomes incorrect. Then the second statement, that this is an interactive mode through which the WEF 2022 edition is being conducted at Davos, right? And the people have been provided with the option to interact with the leaders online through the virtual mode. So second is absolutely fine. Third also is correct, that you have the European Management Forum that was initially created by a person whose name is, yes, there's a name of a very famous person who initially conceptualized European Management Forum, onto which, you know, later the World Economic Forum was laid. So please type that name in the comment section. But 2 and 3 are correct. So your answer will be 1, that is the incorrect statement, right? Chaliye. So let's move to the next article that concerns the Republic Day of 2022. The 26th of January is coming, and you have another controversy. Maybe, I don't know, it is a natural controversy or controversy, or it has been just created out of the blues. So that concerns the tableaus that have been rejected by the union government, not exactly the union government, but you can say the subject expert committee, right, regarding the tableaus from 3 states, that is Tamil Nadu, that is Kerala, and that is, what is the third state? Type it in the comment section, right? So let's discuss how exactly are these tableaus, you know, they are picked up, and how the center chooses them and how the center rejects them. So what becomes important from your prelims perspective is that since this is your fresh controversy, it is in debate. So that is why Republic Day parade and the celebrations and the Republic Day tableaus are, you can say, relevant from the exam perspective. Yes, exactly, West Bengal. Great, great. Yes, certainly Pranjal. Professor Klaus Schwab. Yes, exactly. Great that you mentioned that answer. And only I think Pranjal has done so. So applause for you. Okay. Coming back to this article. So what exactly happens is that the, you know, the Ministry of Defense, it invites applications from all the states and union territories and the departments of the central union or the union ministries or the central ministries. Okay. What they do is that every year in the month of September, they invite applications, they invite proposals from the states, from the UTs, from the ministries of the union government, their departments, the PSUs also, right? That what are the tableaus which they want to present in the upcoming year's Republic Day parade. Then these proposals, they are scrutinized, they are presented by the states, and the subject expert committee is there which looks into these proposals and which examines them, right? So after the examination is done by the SEC, either they give it a go ahead, either they give it their green light, right, or they make some amendments. They ask the states to make some of the changes in them, right? Accordingly, the tableau is either, you know, it is approved or it has been approved. It is approved for the Republic Day parade. But still the point is that even after the subject expert committee has given its approval, then that approval does not mean that on the Rajpath on the 26th of January, that particular tableau by the state is going to be there. Why? Because the actual, or you can say the way the actual or the physical tableau is put up by a particular state, that must be exactly the same for which the approval was given by the subject expert committee. If there is any variation, if there is any change, then that is not going to be paraded on Janpath, right? That is not going to be paraded on the Rajpath, and that is going to get rejected, right? So that is how the procedure goes. So that is the basic. Let's take the question now. Hanji. So which of the following statements is or are correct in relation to Republic Day? First, the tableaus on our day cannot have any writing or use of logos except for the name of the state, union territory or department. Second, each participant in the parade is provided with one tractor and one trailer, and the tableau should fit on that. So what should be the answer here? I think we have discussed all these things, so it should not be difficult for you to mark the answers. Chaliye, so Vivek is saying C. ठीक है, let's take a look at both the statements one by one. Shubhankar says B. Chandrakant says C. Exactly, both the statements are true here. Certainly, you cannot have any writing or you cannot use any logo except for the state which you are representing, or the union territory, or for that matter, the central ministry which you are representing, or the PSC which you are representing, right? So that is absolutely fine. Then you are provided with one tractor and one trailer. You have to do all what you want to do, whatever you want to present on that particular setup only. You cannot have any other vehicle of yours, and you cannot parade it on the Rajpath, right? So second is also correct. So your answer will be both 1 and 2. Question 2 answer will be C, right? Chaliye. So moving to the next article now, this is regarding the India-UK free trade agreement, for which an early harvest agreement is being planned to be negotiated and concluded as early as possible, right? So remember, this has been an irritant between the India-UK relations, which is being sought to be overcome by both the countries. And what becomes important from an exam perspective is the free trade agreements. What are the FTAs and whatever the trade agreements India is having with our other countries, the ones which were recently concluded, or ones which were recently denied, or the ones which are being negotiated right now by India. So that all becomes important from the upcoming exam, right? So the India and UK free trade agreement formal negotiations have been launched, and the aim is to conclude an early harvest agreement over the next few months. So we'll take a look into what exactly is the early harvest agreement. But before that, what we are saying is that the sensitive issues we are trying to avoid the sensitive issues. ठीक है? So what exactly is being done here is that कि अभी sensitive issues को side में रख के जो बाकी चीजें हैं उनको India and UK are trying to convert into a final early harvest agreement, right? So that at least you can have some benefits which can be accrued on that ground, right? So what exactly is an early harvest agreement? देखो सिंपल सी बात है, अर्ली हार्वेस्ट अग्रीमेंट का यहाँ पे नाम जो है वो इसके यूजेज ऑफ वर्ड से भी क्लियर हो रहा है. हाउ what you are trying to do is that you are trying to negotiate some, or you can say majority of the part of the agreement, the free trade agreement, through which you are trying to provide concessions to the other country, and you are also trying to gain concessions from the other country vis-a-vis the trade barriers on both the sides, right? I believe that much you understand. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to keep, or we are going to keep the irritants, or we are going to keep the troublesome issues, the issues which are, which are not being resolved, or which are the hard tasks to be resolved. Those are going to be kept aside, and we are going to conclude the rest of the part of the agreement, right? So this is used to open a bilateral trade between the two countries on a restricted list of goods and services. Why restricted? Because the other ones you are not negotiating, the other ones you are keeping for a full free trade agreement which will be negotiated later, right? And primarily this is a front runner for clinching a more comprehensive FTA. This is going to be negotiated later. This is going to be signed later, but certainly an early harvest agreement will provide you a gateway to a full comprehensive free trade agreement, right? That is what we are trying to achieve here. Then the problem is that these early harvest schemes, they potentially are the low hanging fruits, leaving the tougher goods and services for later. So what exactly means that? What exactly that means that once you conclude an early harvest agreement, that is certainly the easiest job, or that is the easy job. The tougher ones, the ones for which both the countries are not, they are not very much willing to provide those concessions. Those are the tough nuts which are to be cracked. Those are actually the tough nuts which will require, I would say, hard negotiations. Right, so that is an understanding with respect to the early harvest agreement. ठीक है, I believe this is clear to you. Let's move to the question now. हाँ जी, so we are going to take a couple of questions now based on this article's first question. The third question reads, consider the following statements in respect of India's trade agreements with other countries. First, the early harvest agreement between India and UK is aimed to achieve up to 65% of coverage for goods and up to 40% coverage for services. Second, India has concluded a similar early harvest agreement with Australia, which has set the stage for a long pending comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, that is CECA. So please mark your answers quickly in the comment section. Okay, Vivek says C. Hanji, the rest of you? Ahana also says C and Ajay says C. Kumar Chandrakant B. ठीक है, great. So we have B and C as the answers. Look, as far as India and Australia are concerned, India and Australia, both of these countries, they are also contemplating to conclude an early harvest agreement. But that is yet to be concluded. अभी तक conclude नहीं हुआ है. We are trying to negotiate with Australia a similar kind of arrangement, like we are trying to do with UK, right? So the second statement is not correct. We have not concluded a similar early harvest agreement with Australia. We intend to do so, but we have not done it yet. We are trying to conclude a similar arrangement. We are trying to work out a similar arrangement as far as the early harvest agreement with Australia is concerned, and that is going to set the stage for the comprehensive economic cooperation agreement with Australia, right? So second is incorrect. But the first statement is correct, that as far as the India-UK early harvest agreement is concerned, that is going to cover just 60% of goods and 40% of services. Fine. So for question number 3, answer will be A. That is the correct statement. ठीक है, चलिए. So I believe that is clear. That is, we are trying to conclude a similar early harvest agreement with Australia, which is supposed to set the stage for long pending CECA. ठीक है, ये आप PDF में पढ़ सकते हो. For the information of the people who are new to this session, PDF for this session is shared in the Telegram group, जिसका channel, जिसका description box में link जो है वो available है, right? So let's move to the next question based on the same article. That is, which of the following statements is or are correct with respect to the World Trade Organization? First, early harvest agreements that do not graduate into full-scale FTAs are exposed to legal challenges from other countries that are members of the WTO. And second, the WTO was formed on the premise that member countries should not discriminate between their trading partners. Yes. So what should be the answer here? Please quickly mark your answers in the comment section. Okay, Ajay says B and Chandrakant says C. ठीक है, Shubhankar says B. Great. So look, when you talk about the early harvest agreements, that is concluded, but it did not graduate into a full-scale free trade agreement. So what exactly is happening, that you are providing a limited coverage on the front of removing trade barriers. So that is a limited coverage, and that certainly is not allowed under the provisions of the WTO, right? So what is going to happen exactly is that if that early harvest agreement does not fructify into a full-time free trade agreement, then it is going to face legal hurdles in terms of WTO provisions, right? So the first statement is absolutely true. Then the second statement, that the World Trade Organization was formed on the premise that the member countries should not discriminate between their trading partners. Yes, that is also true. Whatever treatment you are providing to one country, that should be provided to all the other member countries of the WTO, right? So as to provide a level playing field for all the member nations of the World Trade Organization. So answer will be C for question 4. That is, both these statements are true, right? So this is the explanation. You can take a read at it. Let's move to the last location-based question for the day. That is, which of the following statements is or are correct about the Tonga volcano? You must have read about it in the newspapers of late. So it is part of the highly active Tonga Kermadec Islands volcanic arc, a subduction zone extending from New Zealand northeast to Fiji. New Zealand north to northeast to Fiji. Second, the recent eruption was powerful enough that it was recorded around the world and sent pressure shockwaves around the planet twice. And third, a volcanic eruption merged the two islands of Hunga Tonga and Hunga Hapai in 2009. I believe that is how you pronounce it. So these are the three options, and the statement, you have to mark the answers out of 1 and 2, 1, 2 and 3, 1, 3, 2 and 3. Okay, Rohit says B. ठीक है. Great. So some are saying B, some are saying C. See, look, this is a recently erupted volcano, right? That had, sent pressure waves across the world, and that is why it was so significant that it had sent shock waves around the planet twice, right? Apart from that, it is a highly active Tonga Kermadec Island volcano. And what is a subduction zone? Madhu sir must have taught you that whenever the plate boundaries, they interact with each other, right? And you have a fault line there. If one plate goes above the other plate, then that is certainly the other plate is going to get subducted. ठीक है, जो दूसरी plate होगी, that is going to get subducted under the first plate. So that is precisely what you call a subduction zone, right? So this plate, certainly the second one is going to go under this one, और ये इसके ऊपर चढ़ जाएगी. That is how it is going to be. This zone is going to get subducted beneath the first plate, right? And that is where you have the fault lines, where along with these lines the earthquakes are very prominent, right? So first statement is also correct. Then as far as the year 2009 is concerned, so that also saw this volcanic eruption which merged these two islands. तो होगा क्या इसमें, या तो कुछ नए लैंडफॉर्म्स जो हैं वो फॉर्म हो जाएंगे, या फिर कुछ एग्जिस्टिंग लैंडफॉर्म्स जो हैं दे आर गोइंग टू गेट, those landforms are going to get subducted, or they are going to get destroyed, right? So that is how this particular phenomena operates. So for question number 5, the answer will be B, that is 1, 2 and 3. All the statements are correct. Yes, it's a submarine volcano. Exactly. True. Ahana, agreed to that. ठीक है. So here you can see the Hunga Tonga and the Hunga Tonga Hapai, these areas which just were merged into one in 2009, right? And there you have the exact location, courtesy the Al Jazeera, right? The Tonga volcano eruption, an underwater volcano in the South Pacific. So please be sure that you know the location as well, you know the recent eruptions as well, and you know whether it was, whether it did form some of the landforms, or it led to the destruction of any existing landform, right? So that is the eruption triggered tsunami warnings across Pacific, including Samoa, Australia, Japan, Hawaii, Chile, and the US Pacific coast. And that is, it erupted, the Tonga Hunga Hapai erupted at 4:10 on January 15, right? A recent eruption. Okay. So the smoke was sent 20 kilometers in the air. That was the massive impact which the volcano had, right? So that is all for today. And this is the plume. You can see this is the bird's eye view, the pictorial representation. This is the image has been captured from the aerial view, right? Which you can see the plumes which are rising here, right? Chaliye, great. So on that count, we have come to an end, and success is going from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. So on that count, thank you to all of you. Stay safe, study well, and Jai Hind.